Hello, hello. My name is Jordyn and I'm your host. And today we have a very, very, very special guest. As you can see, Adrija, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself and what you're all about, you can go ahead and do so.
Sure, thanks, Jordan. Hi, everyone. I'm Adrija, a high school senior from India, and I'm into humanities and social sciences. I enjoy reading, writing, journalism, research, and I'm also into public speaking. I am also a period poverty and education inequity activist, and period poverty is what we will be talking about today. I guess Jordan will take you through that. So, thanks. Yeah.
Of course. All right, we're super excited to have you. This is going to be a really good episode because y'all, unfortunately, I was not aware of what period poverty even is. So this is going to be a learning moment for me as far as just like researching and learning up on this topic, and also just providing you with that research as well if you have never heard of period poverty. So yes, today we will be talking a little bit about what period poverty actually is if you aren't aware of it, and the type of stigmas that come along with it, like as far as this type of stigmas around period and just other things in general. And we will also just be discussing how period poverty is really severely detrimental to people who do menstruate. And lastly, we will be covering what we can do in the future to help alleviate this problem and make everyone who menstruates feel safe and comforted and welcomed. And yeah, so before we get into it, of course, we're going to start with our rose thorn bud. And for old listeners, you already know what this is. As we're doing our rose thorn bud, a rose is a highlight, success, small win, or something positive that has happened within the last week. A thorn is a challenge you experienced or something you can use more support with. And lastly, a bud are some new ideas that have blossomed or something you're looking forward to knowing more about or experiencing. So if you want to start us off with Adrija, you can definitely go ahead.
Sure. The rose would be that my documentary got accepted into two international film festivals, the Home is Distant Shores and the Dirigo 7th International Festival. A thorn would be that I'm really struggling with my school projects. I hope that I get over with them real soon. And the bud is that I got accepted into a research program with ISL and Harvard, and I'm really looking forward to that experience.
Awesome. I love that. There's so much coming to your future and so many good things to look forward to. I love that. I guess to start with my rose thorn bud, my rose this week has just been to learn to relax more, honestly, because I feel like I have been just like really busy like the last 2021, and 2022 started off just really chaotic and busy. So these couple days / week has just been time to relax and enjoy my free time. Yeah, but as far as my thorn goes, I have been experiencing a lot of hip pain, and it's just been, I hate it. Thank you. I hate it because it feels like I can't do as much, but also, again, it's beneficial because I've just been really busy this year. And lastly, a bud is probably this episode. I'm super excited about this episode. It's going to be a really good one.
Yay! I love Jordan.
Oh, thank you. Awesome. So we are just going to start, get right into it and talk a little bit about what period poverty is and the type of stigmas around it. So just to give a definition to work off of, we're going to build around this definition and talk more about it. So period poverty is the lack of access to sanitary products, menstrual hygiene, education, toilets, hand washing facilities, and or waste management. And this all can be due to the stigmas that we will be discussing in this episode. So as far as just like the lack of access to period products, do you want to walk us through that a little bit?
Yes, sure. So, period poverty is something that is very intricately linked with menstrual stigma. Menstrual stigma is when you treat menstruation as something which is a taboo and which cannot be spoken about, which is why you also come away from buying period products or products that can help with sanitation during your menstruation. So this leads to very very unhygienic conditions for all menstruators, because just using cloth or any other substitute apart from genuine period products cannot really help you go through that experience in a sanitary manner. And also because the stigma, it has put this into people's minds that period products brought from outside are unholy things which should not be brought into the house, because of which menstruators still have to make do with cloth in especially the more rural or economically backward areas of countries like India, where it creates a really big problem for all of the menstruators.
Right, right, right. And I could not, I really do want to address to everybody that I am American and I am very privileged as far as this topic goes. So hearing that people have to either just use cloth or other substitutes like newspaper or anything like that, it is very, it's not something that I can relate to, but I can also empathize with these people because I know that it's not good because I've used a substitute like toilet paper and it's like the worst experience. So to know that there are people who like continually have to deal with the lack of access to period products like on a continual basis, it's not something that's good, obviously. Just to give a little bit of background around this phenomenon, at least 7% of women and girls that were surveyed relied on old clothes, pieces of blankets, chicken feathers, mud, and newspapers to use as substitutes for, their period when it did come on. And as far as 7% goes, that sounds like a really, really small percentage, but 7% can be like thousands of people who are suffering with this. And there is somebody who thank you to my research team for providing all the research for this episode. But reading the research, there is an activist about who aims to spread awareness about period poverty, and her name is Megha Dese. Do not want to pronounce that wrong. I looked it up beforehand, so apologies if I did pronounce that wrong. But she did share her story about this, saying that she was too embarrassed to ask her uncle to buy sanitary pads and had to use old rags and shirts to manage her period. And that just proves that it is a very common phenomenon that a lot of people unfortunately go through. And we do want to talk about how this can also just lead to very poor hygiene, and this can also cause like infections or worse things in general. So we do want to make sure that everybody gets this sort of access to period products. I know that there is a lot of stigma around periods and some sort of misguided thoughts about people. Do you want to talk about those misguided thoughts and beliefs?
Yeah, definitely. So here I would like to talk about the dichotomy. So the main reason for menstrual stigma is that when menstruators are on their monthly cycle, they are considered to be impure or polluted. So, the menstrual blood, that is something that is considered to be something very, very polluted that nobody else should go near. So, and this is also considered as a punishment for women, that women only menstruate because they did something wrong and God punished them because of it. So it used to happen especially in India in the earlier times, like say my grandmother or my great grandmother's time. When women used to menstruate, they would be locked into cow sheds, for example, or locked in the attic in cold, dark, wet places with nobody to take care of them, locked there for 5-6 days straight, as long as their cycle lasts, where somebody would just open the door and insert the food and the water for them to drink, and they had to sleep on the floor. So my grandmother's time, what she told me, when she got married, the practice of locking women into cow sheds was not there, but that doesn't mean the stigma wasn't there. She had to sleep on the floor, be it summer, be it winter, be it rainy season. be the floor wet or dry, nobody cared about it. If you were on your period, you have to sleep on the floor or you have to sleep in the cowshed. So that is what she went through, but fortunately she did not let my mother and my mother's sister go through the same thing. Which is why I think they also did not continue that practice. But yeah, I think that is something very, very unfortunate. And where the dichotomy comes in is that when they are menstruating, women are considered impure. But if a woman does not menstruate at all, still they will be considered impure. Because, you know, if without menstruation, reproduction is not possible. That is a known fact, and that is something that people know. And again, the patriarchal norms, you know, the division of labor in society, where the primary role of women is considered to be taking care of the home and to give birth to children. So if they are not menstruating, that means that they are not fertile, quote unquote, and they cannot give birth to children. So because of these strict expectations, if a woman does not menstruate, then she is impure. And when a woman menstruates, even then she is impure. I think these things are very, very unreasonable, but they do exist in society.
Right. And I cannot believe, like, just hearing you talk about how, oh, you're impure if you're on your period, or if you're not having your period, then you're still impure. Like, there's no sort of, like, freedom for people who do menstruate, and that can lead them to just feel, like, very isolated, very trapped, as if everything they do is wrong. And really, that's why we want to bring awareness to this. Not only does it cause, like, physical harm as far as just, like, infections and things like that, it can also just be very mentally tasking, very draining, very isolating, especially hearing about, like, having to sleep in the cowshed or having to sleep in the floor. Like, you're judged because of your body's natural functions, and it's like, I don't know if you've ever had an experience with this. I'm going to ask you, actually, have you ever had an experience or know somebody who has had experience with just, like, feeling ashamed of their body for menstruating or anything like that?
So yes, I do know people like that. Basically, as I said, because of the stigma, there is not much information about it. I think we'll talk about it more in more detail later when we come to it. But yes, because there is not much information, people, especially young girls or young menstruators, when they begin their periods, they think that something very scary is happening to them. They are not really sure what it is that is going on in their bodies, because of which they are scared, and it leads to physical stress, mental health problems as well. And yes, of course they are ashamed, because they think that what abnormal thing is happening to me. They do not know that these are normal changes that their body will go through during puberty.
Right. And that's an absolutely awful thing, to just be ashamed of something that you cannot control. It's a lot of stress that I can see that can be a cause of that, of course. And just to throw some more facts out, 71% of people don't know what a period is due to period poverty and the stigma around it, or 75% of bleeders are at risk to infection due to lack of resources, and lastly, 23 people not 23 people, but 23% of people drop out of school after period due to, you know, that stigma around periods, and, you know, that sort of isolation that we were talking about has caused them to drop out of schools or not engage in daily activities. But just to raise more awareness around the subject, there are some documentaries that you really need to watch. I actually need to watch one of these documentaries, but I've already watched the other one. But Pandora's Box is a really good documentary that you should watch about period poverty, as well as on Netflix, actually, there is a film called Period End of Sentence. So if you want to learn more about that, you should definitely watch the documentaries and do your research, but we will talk about that later on. Yeah, so to get really into the depth of it, just to talk about the effects of it, how is period poverty detrimental for menstruators?
So, as I said, it is becoming very difficult. It has become very difficult to emphasize that periods are something very, very normal. Just like you breathe, just like you digest, the same way periods are a bodily phenomenon that happens. It is not something that is coming from Mars, right? It is
Mm-hmm.
something that happens as a part of our body. So I think the fact that this is not being normalized is the main problem. And the real reason for it is that this has been embedded in our culture and it has been coming down from generations, orally, say orally, or in written text. So, which is why these issues are very, very stigmatized. And, this teaching has been passed down from
Mm-hmm.
grandmother to mother to child, that periods are something that is impure and it is something that you should be ashamed of. If you're having a period, hide from all the men who are around you. Shh, don't talk about it at all. So, for example, my own personal experience, which is something I can say more than 70%, 70 to 75% of Indian menstruators will go through in their lifetime. I was in grade 5 when I began menstruating, and at that time I had zero idea of what it was. One of my friends had begun menstruating, and all she told me was that, this is something that you will have every month, so be prepared for it. Obviously, she also didn't know about it. And what my mother did was she only taught me how to use a sanitary napkin and nothing else. I thought that I had contracted some kind of chronic terminal disease and I was not going to live for very long. I thought I would die. And it was only when in grade 8 I had to study about reproduction in my biology book that I actually came to know what menstruation was all about and how it happened. That, there is nothing impure related to it.
Mm-hmm.
And the effect is even more heavily felt in lower income households, because till now periods or the period products industry is not something that has received a lot of support. So which is why period products can sometimes be costly for people from lower income households to buy. So if you're not getting to eat for days on end, how can you expect such a household to be focused on menstrual hygiene, right? So it is these effects are felt in lower income households where menstruators do not have access to period products as well. Also, in places where this is more stigmatized, women especially are not allowed to go out no matter how important work they have. Because they have to hide. As I said, it is something shameful, and because of that, many people choose to skip school, which, as we know, is very detrimental. And this basically is a big problem. It can be seen as a hindering of people's dreams and aspirations, in fact.
Right, right, right. I don't even have anything to say to that. Like, I'm just absorbing myself in like your story, especially I don't know how they expected you to know how to manage your period when that sort of thing wasn't really discussed. Like you said, in grade 5 your friend didn't even know about it and you didn't know about it, so no wonder you thought that you were dying or that this phenomenon wasn't normal at all. And it was especially crazy to me how you said that you only learned more about it in grade 8, which is like a vast jump from grade 5 to grade 8. That's crazy. I remember even before I had my period that like me personally, that thing was sort of discussed. Like it will come. Obviously, I didn't know a lot about it, but it was considered a normal phenomenon, and I know that in certain places that's not what it's considered to be. Obviously, we're having this conversation, but yeah. As far as just like my own experience as well with like periods, I obviously everybody knows I am non-binary. I do go by they he pronouns, and periods
I
have
was just coming to that. I
huh?
was just coming to that.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, my experience with periods has been a weird one because that's what makes everybody a woman, and women are seen as birth givers. So yeah, we're gonna talk a little bit about just how LGBTQ people like cope with period poverty or how they're affected. So if you want to start us off.
Sure. So in India, especially, even though there is a pride movement and people have been working very hard to ensure equality for the LGBTQIA plus community, but still, especially among the older generations, there is no recognition of the community as of yet. So basically, the connotation is that everyone who is assigned female at birth is a woman, and a woman has to menstruate. That is one side of the spectrum. Second thing, if a person is menstruating, that automatically makes them a woman. So as we can see, both of these happen to be very, very problematic. For example, if you do not identify as a woman and you still menstruate, as we know that, sometimes trans people, gender diverse people, they menstruate, even though they might not identify as women. So that leads to a lot of stigma around them. Like, for example, you were assigned male at birth. How can you menstruate? You should be ashamed. You should, end yourself, something like that. And on the other hand, if a person was assigned woman at birth and does not identify as a woman anymore, they will be asked, why are you not menstruating? It is your duty. It is your so and so, which creates even more stigma around them and makes it even more difficult for them to fight for their rights, right? So, if for example you were assigned male at birth and you are menstruating, or if you were assigned female at birth and you are not menstruating, you will be made an outcast, you will be called unholy, you will be called an aberration, something that is not normal, and you will be shunned from society. Like, you will literally be put aside and said that you're not fit to be a part of it. So all of this creates even more stress and pressure, and it leads to social divides, or it makes social divides even deeper, right? But I think that every generation or every individual has a choice. For example, my grandmother chose to pass on a certain part of what she knew about periods, or whatever had been passed down to her about period stigma, to my mother. My mother passed on a part of it to me. But, I have a choice. And I will definitely not choose to tell my future generations that it is something shameful, right? Because right now I know better. Right now there is more access to information. So even though these problems exist, I think the choice lies with us about what to leave behind and what to take forward, and that is very important.
For sure. That was very inspirational. We love that. Love the way you worded that. Definitely agree with the sentiment. Just to dive a little bit more into like how LGBTQ people are, faced with these issues. People can experience a lot of gender dysphoria, for example, myself, surrounding their period. Knowing that a lot of trans people, a lot of non-binary people can experience gender dysphoria around their period due to it being a women's issue, as I said before, it can be, again, causing a lot of stress on top of period poverty. And a lot of people may even face safety concerns as far as just menstruating. Trans men, for example, who are seen as male in society, or for my LGBTQ people who know, pass in society as male, they can also face, again, a lot of safety issues due to there not being disposable areas in men's bathrooms for periods, like period products such as tampons, pads, etc. And that can again be very isolating and very stressful, knowing that periods are not as inclusive as they should be. Again, everybody menstruates. And lastly, trans people who are more susceptible to living in poverty than a cisgender person can also be susceptible to period poverty. As Adrija said about low-income households and how they don't have a lot of access to period products due to, being low-income families. The transgender people who are also on the streets, are homeless, will not have a lot more access to period product. Again, this issue affects more than women. Everybody menstruates, so we need to be inclusive when we are talking about and trying to eliminate period poverty. This last year especially, not even last year, 2020 and 2021, had, obviously, we know we were in the pandemic. We still are in the pandemic. Unfortunately, it's not solved yet. But we want to dive a little bit about how COVID-19 really affected period poverty as an issue. So, yeah.
Sure. So, something very interesting here is that COVID-19 actually had kind of an opposite impact on menstrual stigma and period poverty. Like, when it comes to menstrual stigma, there were several organizations which were already working on the issue, but because of all the taboo associated with it, they were not able to reach a wider audience. It was more localized. But
Mm-hmm.
when everything went online during the pandemic, they also shifted their operations online, which means that now they had access to an even wider audience, which allowed them to raise their voices even more strongly and to empower other people across the country or across the world to raise their voice as well. So this means that, the voice against menstrual stigma was amplified to a large extent during the pandemic. But now coming to period poverty. So, especially in countries like India with a large population and developmental problems, the pandemic led to many people losing their jobs, a large segment of the population. The GDP almost went into negative, and it did go into negative for a lot of countries. So, in that situation, if a family does not have access to food, water, cannot go to school, does not have electricity, obviously the last thing that they will be concerned about is period products, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because as I said, they are considered to be secondary and not really required, which is again not the way to think, not the, I would say, appropriate perspective, but that is how things are. So which is why it amplified period poverty instead of being able to reduce it. So here we see a dichotomy. On one hand, there is increased awareness about periods, but on the other hand, there is lower use of period products, especially among the underprivileged or the lower income groups. So this was the opposing spectrums that rose. Obviously, there are several organizations like the Period Poverty, which I'm associated with, the Period Movement, which is based in USA, which are already working on the issues, but we do have a very long way to go.
For sure, for sure. And I think that the pandemic was like bittersweet in a way because, a lot of people were passing away and everybody was struggling as far as COVID-19 went. But there was also like amplified movement of certain issues such as period poverty or even mental health and things like that. So thank you, pandemic, I guess, but also no. No, you didn't have to do that. But yeah, so as to just wrap this up a little bit, we're going to talk about what we can do in the future to, or not even just in the future, but also presently, to alleviate the stigma around periods and like help alleviate the problem with period poverty. So, what are some things that you want to leave everybody off with?
Sure. So, as I said, you do not always need to do something big or phenomenal, quote unquote, to be able to make an impact. You can start as small as you and your family or you and your friend. Firstly, recognize that periods are natural and periods are a biological process. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
It is not a choice. It is something that happens to you because of the way your bodily functions are structured, right? So, once you recognize that, try and encourage open conversation about menstrual stigma and period poverty. Try to involve as many people as possible. Do not try to shun away people from the other genders, like say men or people from LGBTQIA plus community. They also need to know. Everybody needs to have awareness. For example, I have a little brother, and I'm going to be the one to say it to him because otherwise nobody will ever. So, which is why try and encourage conversations across it and break the cycle. If stigma is what has been passed down in your family for generations, try and move out of it and see the problem as it should be seen. Um, Also, another thing, what you can do when you are ready is to try and get in touch with organizations that are already working on the problem of period poverty and menstrual stigma. Try and see how you can volunteer to help them out, either fundraise or organize educational sessions. And this is what we can do. But there is also something that the government can do. So in India especially, I do not know about other countries, but in India especially, period poverty is an area which has received little to no attention. It has received very little attention. So I think what the government can do is, number one, sponsor campaigns that are already organized by various organizations working on the issue, or create their own awareness programs. Number two, what they can do is they can subsidize the period products industry so that it can be made available to people who need it at a lower cost. And I
Mm-hmm.
think this is something that can really, really go a long way in improving access to period products.
For sure.
Uh, Yes, and also this is something on a more personal level. If you have friends who are in a situation, say, or who are in a country where they really have trouble navigating through their periods, or are really where periods are really stigmatized, try and support them. Try and support them with resources. Try and support them with awareness. Just try and support them to get through it. And whenever you research about this issue, or whenever you come across something, try and verify the information before you act on it or take an information, because as always there are many fake organizations as well out
Mm-hmm.
there who will just take your money as fundraising and not use it for any good. So only go with verified information and verified organizations. But yeah, I think that as long as you are empathetic, as long as you are understanding, you can definitely make a difference. Like, if we have the will, we will have the way.
For sure. Love that ending. If we have the will, we will have the way. um, as far as just like actually, um, supporting the cause, even you don't even have to do it locally. You can also just be on the internet, spreading the word, having these conversations, such as being on a podcast, for example. You can, spread awareness. Use social media as much as you can. If you are a person that is actively on social media, use hashtags such as period poverty or period positivity. Love that hashtag. Just to spread awareness, have that conversation. And I know that, as you said, the government can definitely assist more than individual people can. As far as that's with a lot of issues, honestly. Like, how do you expect like the general population to fix climate change if you're not making government policies? But anyway, that's a different conversation. um, yeah, there should be like movements, as far as like government goes, to make period projects free and available and accessible to anybody around them, or having a variety of period products in public places. Like, for example, I think the only places that I've seen like free period products, which is very, very rare, I rarely see free period products. They're only tampons, so maybe try to have a variety, like tampons, pads. I believe there's menstrual cups as well. Just having that variety for whatever is comfortable for the person. And yeah, as Adrija just said, try to support organizations and charities.
Would you believe that I have never seen free period products except when our organization distributes it?
I would
And that
believe
is
it.
the sad reality.
I would believe it. I know, man, that is very, very crazy. I even like just hearing it, saying that you've never seen free period products, and knowing that I myself have only seen it like 2 or 3 times in my life. It's crazy. That should really be, you know, a basic necessity for everybody. This is a biological thing that we can't help. So why are these products not free? But yeah, definitely. As far as just like supporting organizations and charities, there are many that you can look up and start at. As Adrija said earlier, with the Period Society and the Period Movement, there are also other organizations and charities you can support, such as Bloody Good Period, which is a very bold name, and I love it. Love it, love it, love it. And there's also the Red Box Project and Action Aid. And yeah, if you want to go ahead and support those colleges and promote their message, that would be great. Did you want to say something, or?
Just that, um, if you're passionate about something, do not let anything stop you. Do not let stigma around you stop you. Do not let people around you stop you. When I actually realized what periods were all about, I understood how repressed and stigmatized menstruators were in our society, and I knew that I wanted to raise my voice against it, so I went ahead and do it. Yes, you will face opposition, but never let that opposition stop you. If you really want to do it, you will be able to find a way. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you can advocate for any cause at any age. You don't have to be like, you don't have, just because you're 14 doesn't mean you can't advocate for these, you know, these issues. So yeah, don't let anything stop you. And if you're passionate about something, again, advocate for it. You are helping many, many people by spreading the word and spreading awareness and starting the conversation. So yeah. Anything like you want to say before we close out this episode for good?
Just that whoever is listening to this today, if you were inspired, just as Jordyn said, as a follow up or something, as a call to action, please try and support organizations if you can, just by sharing a post on your story maybe, or using one of the hashtags mentioned earlier. Trust me, one hashtag you use can help 10 menstruators who are being repressed out there. Believe that every action of yours can be powerful, and it actually is. Thank you so much.
Of course. Love that. That was very powerful. Just to close out this episode, we do have a website. Our website is bloompod.wixsite.com/our.org, and you can find us on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook, all at foreverblooming.org, and Twitter at foreverbloom.org. Adrija, do you have any social media handles that you want to share?
Yeah, sure. If you wish to, you can follow me on Instagram at Adrija_Jana2004, all in lowercase.
Follow her. Please do follow her. And the research and transcript for this episode is on our website. Please do check out our research because it is very, very valuable for you to learn more about this issue. So yeah, our podcast guest form is in our episode section if you want to be on Forever Blooming, as well as our audience spotlight if you want to have advice featured in one of our episodes. And our email is management@foreverbloompod.org. Let us know your thoughts, questions, comments, because we love hearing from you. Be sure to check out fborg.card.co. That is card with 2 R's for all of our easy, accessible links. And make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and rate us on Spotify, and share with your friends. If you enjoyed this episode, please share with your friends. This is a very valuable episode. Everybody needs to know about this. And lastly, please have a great day, afternoon, or night whenever you're listening to this. Thanks for tuning in.